Hey guys, tonight we ride into a place where the dust never settles, the whiskey could strip paint, and one wrong look could lead to a funeral. Welcome to the Wild West, where trouble doesn't need a reason to find you. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Please drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from and when it is over there. Seeing who's joining this sleepy adventure worldwide is always a joy. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe switch on a fan if you like that soft hum in the background. And let's drift into tonight's journey. You arrive in Dustbite Gulch on a scorching golden afternoon. The wind slaps sand into your face like it's testing your commitment to survival. Unlike your resolve, you step off a rickety stagecoach, and your suitcase hits the ground with a thud. This town looks like everyone's got unresolved business with everyone else. From the rooftop guy polishing his rifle with his beard to the old lady throwing shoes at chickens for looking at her funny. Everyone stares at you like you just accidentally married someone's wife. The sign hanging in front of the saloon reads, Dustbite Gulch, population, depends on the day. This is where census records are kept in the graveyard behind the church. You blend in by walking into the saloon, a lopsided wooden structure seen in multiple shootouts. The door creaks open like it's questioning your life choices. Everything is coated in a haze of smoke, sweat, and whiskey that has expired since the last war. The banjo player stops strumming. The woman chewing a cigar mid-poker game looks up. A large man nods once, then returns to a heated debate about whose cow is dumber. You inch toward the bar, sitting on a stool that appears to be made from 3 different chairs and a piece of coffin. The bartender is a red-haired woman with a blacksmith's arms and a voice like a growling tiger. "What'll it be?" she growls. You swallow hard. "Something light?" She nods and pours you a brown liquid that smells like someone mixed firewood with sheer determination. You take a sip and are immediately transported back to an era before your digestive system existed. The man next to you, bushy beard, guns on both hips, and one strapped to his leg, snorts. Greenhorn. You grin weakly, like the stool beneath you. When you think it couldn't get worse, the saloon doors burst open. A man goes flying out like a sack of potatoes. Someone yells, "He said tacos are better than chili." You realize that even taste buds can get you killed here. A woman in a cowhide dress approaches. She's nearly 6 feet tall, has a dragon tattoo, and holds a whip. "You the wedding singer today?" she asks. Before you can respond, a voice shouts from across the room, "No! He's the wanted man. Look at the ring on his right hand." Silence. Someone cracks their knuckles. A cat in the corner leaps onto a table in terror. You slowly stand up, smiling nervously. I was just asking for directions to the post office." No one answers. But from their eyes, you should run. Now you bolt out of the saloon, suitcase in hand, hat flying off into the wind like it's disowning you. An old man near the church watches and mutters, "Another lost soul." You hide behind the stables, gasping, heart pounding like a war drum. You've been in the Wild West for less than 30 minutes, and you've already nearly been beaten, mistaken for a criminal, and recruited to sing at a wedding. But you're still alive. For now. And that's worth celebrating. As long as you don't drink more of that stuff. You look up at the sunset, staining the sky orange, and you know, tomorrow won't be easier. But first, you need a bed, and a place without knives, angry horses, or women with whips. Congratulations, cowboy. You survived your first half day. And this is just the beginning. You thought that after your dramatic escape from the saloon, you'd get a few peaceful minutes to breathe, reflect, and consider returning to accounting. But no, the Wild West doesn't allow peace. Because the first thing you see when you peek out from behind the stables is a goat. not a normal goat. A white one, curly-haired, with an expression like it's silently evaluating your survivability. It doesn't bleat, just stares, unblinking. Eyes that say, "You won't survive till noon, kid." You look away, step back, and bump into something hard, cold, and smelling faintly of boot polish. It's a pair of boots. Above the boots, a wide leather belt with a gleaming silver star. Sheriff. You look up, slowly. It's like a slow-motion scene from a bad western. Standing before you is a man in his 60s, tall as a telegraph pole, with enough beard to smuggle a pistol in. His eyes are sharp as a whetted blade. His smile does not exist. "You new in town?" he asks, voice as even and calm as a cocked revolver. You nod, sweating bullets. "You know you just ran from a bar fight, right?" Another nod, then a weak smile, the universal "please don't kill me" expression. He doesn't smile back. Good, because here in Dustbite Gulch, we've got one simple rule. You swallow hard. If you start trouble, you dig a grave. If you run from it, you dig two. One for you. One for whoever chases you. You shake your head rapidly, raising your hands like a school child with a question. "I didn't start anything. I was just asking for the post office," he interrupts. "We get one of those every week. 3 of them were bandits. One was a poet. Still unsure which is worse." You stammer, I just need a place to sleep." "There is one. Jail outpost's got a bed." He turns. "Follow me." You follow like a housebroken pup, praying the jail outpost has a mattress. It does not. It's a tiny wooden room with a rusted iron cot and a blanket thinner than a gambler's excuse. He points. "Here. Sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk more, if you're still alive." "Still alive?" He nods, dead serious. "That goat doesn't stare at anyone for more than 3 minutes. If it's still there by morning, you've got a special destiny." You glance out the window. The goat's still there, still staring. A slow bee rises, like an ominous soundtrack. You sigh and lay down, hugging your bag like it contains your last shred of hope. The room is quiet, aside from the whistling wind and the distant rattle of chains from the next cell over. Someone is snoring, loudly. It could be a prisoner. It could be a bear. You decide not to ask. A little later, the sheriff creaks open the door and steps in, carrying a steaming tin bowl. "Eat," he says, setting it on the table. You sniff it. It smells like meat stew, and resolve. "What kind of meat?" you ask warily. "Chicken. Maybe." "Maybe?" "Whatever collapsed in front of my porch last night. That's what it is." You hesitate, then decide. It's better to be full if you have to run. You eat. It's not bad. Hot, salty, a little weird. But out here, that qualifies as 5 stars. Night deepens. The wind howls like it's telling ghost stories through the cracks in the wall. You wrap yourself tight in the blanket, dreaming of air conditioning, sandwiches, and bathrooms with doors. But before sleep fully claims you, you glance once more out the window. The goat is still watching. You whisper, "If I'm still alive tomorrow, please spare me." It blinks. You don't know if that was a hallucination or a promise. Good night, cowboy. This was just day 1. You wake up feeling a little too alive. No one broke into your room. No one shot you. And, most unbelievably, the goat is gone. In its place, a chicken perches on the windowsill, staring at you like it's here to apologize for last night. You're not sure if that's a good omen, or just breakfast showing up early. The church bell lets out a weak ding, not the kind that wakes you up, but the kind that says, "Someone really tried, and then gave up halfway." You drag yourself out of bed, your back aching like you spent the night sleeping on a pile of bent spoons. The sheriff is already standing there somehow, as if he doesn't sleep, as if he stands and nods through the night. "Up already," he says without waiting for confirmation. "Time for breakfast. Hope you like beans." You do not like beans, but you do like living, so you beam. "Fantastic. I like beans more than oxygen." He nods. "Good. Around here, breakfast is a survival ritual. If you can eat it and stay conscious, you're fit to leave town." You follow him to the cook shack, a wooden lean-to outback, where smoke rises from a cast-iron pot larger than your faith in mornings. Inside, a round, shirtless man stirs something bubbling with a tree branch. He's wearing an apron that reads, "Kiss the cook, if you dare." "New guy?" he asks without turning around. "Yes," you reply. "Just passing through." "Uh-huh. They all say that. This town's got a way of keeping people." You don't like how he says keeping. You sit at the wooden table and feel something stick to your pants. You don't ask. You don't want to know. A plate of beans is plopped in front of you. No spoon. It's just a piece of bread more complex than the resolve of a tax collector. You use it to scoop the beans. It fails, but it makes the beans look more like food. You take a bite. It tastes like hot mud boiled with disappointment. "Something's burnt," you say. "Thanks," the cook replies, beaming with pride. Suddenly, bang! A gunshot rings out outside. You jump, sending beans into your lap. "Oh, just the hunter testing a new rifle," the sheriff says, sipping his coffee. "Or someone got betrayed. Either way, it's fine." You wipe yourself with a napkin that looks like it served 3 generations. Do you always hear gunfire over breakfast? Better than funeral music means the guy still had bullets. Your mood does not improve, but you finish the beans anyway, out of politeness or sheer bravery. After breakfast, the sheriff leads you to Main Street. "Now," he says, "you need a job if you don't want to end up on the suspicious drifters list." A job? Yeah. Everybody pitches in, except for the goat. It has diplomatic immunity. You're not sure if he's joking. You don't dare ask. "3 choices," he says, holding up 3 sun-tanned fingers. "Haul water for the saloon, mind the blacksmith's fire, or deliver a letter to the lookout post on the hill." "Letter?" Your eyes light up. "Sounds easy." "Not really. That hill's got wolves, and One-Eyed Larry's hiding out there. But the letter itself? Very light." You think for exactly 4 seconds, then say, "I'll haul water." He nods. Smart. But don't spill it. Water's worth more than gold out here, and the saloon lady has a broom she's not afraid to use. You're handed a bucket and a map, just a paper that says, "Turn left after the broken outhouse." And just like that, your first official day as a working resident of Dustbite Gulch begins. You survived breakfast. You dodged a deadly delivery mission, and now you're holding a bucket, actually contributing to society. A goat crosses your path. It's the goat. It winks. You're not sure if you should feel hopeful or start writing a will. You begin your day in a new role, the saloon water hauler. No prestige, no pay, no insurance, but at least it doesn't involve wolves, gunshots, or delivering mail to a wanted man named One-Eyed Larry. Following the sheriff's instructions, you cradle a tin bucket bigger than your retirement dreams. Turn left after the broken outhouse, go past the pile of burning tires, and watch out for the demon chicken. It hates strangers. You follow the directions exactly, and still get chased 20 meters by that chicken. You arrive at the well after a soft fall into hay and a brutal hit to your dignity. A low brick structure, cool water, crystal clear, surrounded by 3 old ladies playing cards. One of them looks up and says, "Careful, sugar. This well takes water and your pride." You smile politely. She smiles back like she knows you'll be drinking shame before noon. You draw the water and pour it into the bucket. It's heavy. Very heavy. The heavy that makes you question all your morning decisions. But you grip the handle, brace yourself, and start walking like a hero, with no upper body strength. The walk from the well to the saloon is just 3 blocks. But with the weight in your hands, it feels like migrating westward via bucket. You round a corner, the saloon now in sight, when you hear, "Wah!" Something, or someone, tumbles off a rooftop, crashes into a cactus bush, and pops up like gravity never happened. It's a man. Messy hair, a torn shirt, and a smell like whiskey are fist-fighting garlic breath. He dusts himself off, sees you, and his eyes glisten. You're the water angel, he says, voice slurred but poetic. Grant me a sip, O muse of moist salvation. No. He drops to his knees, hugs the bucket, and whispers to the water. You are the source, the love, the poem not yet penned. You look around, hoping someone might help. No one. A dog nearby turns away in embarrassment. You're a poet? You ask, trying to stay polite. I am the unsung song, the broken verse in a dusty land. Thud. He collapses face first into the dirt, snoring like a tractor. You stand there, holding your bucket, with a passed-out poet draped over your shoes. For a moment, you wonder, what even is your life? Across the street, the saloon owner leans out, hands on hips. If that bucket doesn't hit my hands in 5 minutes, I'll pour bourbon on your head and light you like a lantern. You carefully extract your bucket from the poet's grasp, sidestep his tangled hair, and resume your journey, now soaked in sweat, dust, and deep regret. At the saloon door, the wooden flaps creak open like they know you're the protagonist in a hard-knock chapter. The saloon owner snatches the bucket from your hands. Heavy, good. Next time, don't let it soak in verse. You bow like a Royal Academy graduate, turn to leave, and crack. Your wrist just made a sound. It's not painful, but loud enough to promise tomorrow will be memorable. You flop onto the saloon steps, panting. It's not even noon. You've been chased by poultry, fondled by poetry, and betrayed by your effort. A man approaches. Leather coat, medicine bag. Hat tilted so far left it's practically a statement. He nods. You look like you need medicine. Lucky for you, I'm a doctor. Your eyes light up. Really? Number. But I once rode horseback across 3 states and didn't die, so I know what works. He hands you a small bottle. Drink this, made from root bark, dried snake, and cider. You eye the bottle, then him. Side effects? Yes. You might see things that aren't real, but your wrist won't hurt because you'll be too busy screaming. You think for 3 seconds, then take the bottle. You wake up feeling a little too alive. No one broke into your room. No one shot you. And, most unbelievably, the goat is gone. Instead, there's a chicken perched on the windowsill, staring at you like it wants to apologize for last night. You're unsure if this is a good omen or just breakfast arriving early. The church bell rings with a weak ding. It is not the kind of bell that wakes you up, more like the sound of someone who tried their best and then gave up halfway. You drag yourself out of bed, your back feeling like you slept on a pile of bent spoons. The sheriff is already there as if he has never slept. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just stood there all night, watching you, nodding occasionally. Awake, he says, not waiting for your nod. Time for breakfast. Hope you like beans. You don't like beans, but you do enjoy living. So you beam. Wonderful. I like beans more than oxygen. He nods. Good. Around here, breakfast is a survival ritual. Anyone who finishes and stays conscious is cleared to leave town. You follow him to the cook shack, a wooden shed behind the jailhouse, with smoke billowing from a cast iron pot bigger than your faith in today. Inside is a round, shirtless man in an apron that reads, "Kiss the cook, if you dare." He's stirring the pot with a tree branch. "New guy?" he asks, not turning around. "Yes," you say. "Just passing through." Uh-huh, everyone says that. But this town has a way of making people stay. You don't like how he says stay. You sit at a wooden table and feel something stick to your pants. You don't ask. You don't want to know. A plate of beans is set in front of you. No spoon. It's just a piece of bread tougher than a miner's morals. You use it to scoop beans. It fails, but at least it makes the beans look like food. You take a bite. It tastes like dirt boiled with disappointment. "Something's burnt," you say. "Thanks," the cook replies, smiling with pride. Just then, bang! A gunshot rings out outside. You flinch and dump the beans in your lap. "Oh, just a hunter testing a new rifle," the sheriff says, sipping coffee. "Or someone getting betrayed. No big deal." You wipe the beans off with a napkin that looks like it served 3 generations. "Do you hear gunfire during breakfast often?" you ask. "Better than funeral music. Means the other guy's still shooting. Your spirits do not improve. But you finish your beans anyway, out of bravery or basic kitchen courtesy. After breakfast, the sheriff walks you to Main Street. "Now," he says, "you'll need a job if you don't want to be listed as a suspicious drifter." Job? Yes. Everyone pitches in around here, except for the goat. It has diplomatic immunity. You're not sure if he's joking. You don't dare ask. 3 options, he continues, raising 3 sunburned fingers. Haul water for the saloon, watch the blacksmith's forge, or deliver a letter to the ranger post up the hill. A letter? You perk up. That sounds light. It is, but the hill's got wolves, and a fugitive named One-Eyed Larry is hiding nearby. But the letter is light. You think for 4 seconds, then say, "I'll haul water." He nods. Smart, but don't spill it. Water's worth more than gold, and the saloon owner owns a broom she's not afraid to use. You're handed a bucket and a map, which is just a scrap of paper that says, "Turn left past the broken outhouse." And just like that, you begin your first official job in Dustbite Gulch. You've survived breakfast. You've dodged a death mission. You're holding a bucket and doing something worthwhile. A goat trots by. That goat. It winks again. You're unsure whether to feel reassured or start writing your will. You think, that's enough. After 3 days of living like a dish rag in a town full of dust, guns, and judgmental animals, you decide, I'm leaving Dustbite Gulch. A big plan. A plan that needs a strategy. A plan that might rescue your dignity, which has been napping somewhere near the horse stable since part 2. You sit in the blacksmith's woodshed, helmet pot still on your head, clutching your wine barrel lid shield, and scribble your escape plan onto the inside of your helmet with charcoal. Plan to leave town before getting forced into marriage, a duel, or permanent membership in the Water Carriers Guild. 1. Wake up early. 2. Don't drop the bucket. 3. Sneak to the stagecoach stop. 4. Avoid anyone familiar. 5. Get on the coach. 6. Don't look back. Even if someone calls your name or shouts, "The goat knows your secret." You nod. The plan is solid. Almost genius. I might suggest turning it into a book. You're just about to drift off when, knock knock, a polite tap at the woodshed door. You open it. It's a tall, gangly man in a dark red cloak, broom hair, and a grin with far too many teeth. One of those teeth, The first thing you notice is a dagger, not a metaphor. An actual steel tooth, shiny and sharp like your mood after eating reheated beans for the fourth time. "Hello?" he says like a spoon scraping old cheese. "Name's Kevin. Most folks call me Knife Tooth Kevin. You. I see why. Heard you're a Ludo champion?" he asks, eyes gleaming. "You. I don't think I ever said that." "Perfect," he smiles. "I like newcomers." You try to close the door gently, but Kevin steps inside like he's returning to a house he owned in a past life. "Sit," he says, laying out a cloth from nowhere and placing a hand-carved Ludo set on the floor. The pieces are beans. The dice are made from fish bones. Everything seems like it used to be alive. You sit because you do not want to offend a man with knife teeth. "Rules are simple," Kevin says, unblinking. "Every time you lose, you share a secret. Every time I lose, I share one. If we tie, we stare into each other's souls for 5 minutes in total silence. You. Cool. You roll the dice, a 1. A single bean rolls out of the stable. Kevin grins, rolls a 6. He zooms 3 pieces ahead and declares, "First win." You sigh. "Fine. My secret is, I didn't know Ludo could be played like this." "No problem," he says. "My secret is, I once kissed a cow on a dare, and won. Round 2. You're learning." You trick Kevin with a clever sidestep. He loses. "All right," you say. "Your turn." "My secret," he whispers, "is I know someone who successfully escaped Dustbite Gulch. But the price was steep." "What price?" "A front tooth, and their belief in friendship." You chuckle nervously, scoot half an inch farther away. Before you can ask more, Kevin stands up. "That's enough for tonight," he says. "If you want to leave, meet me behind the horse stables at sunrise. Bring something that makes you feel like you." "You mean luggage?" "Number, I mean something that stops you from dissolving into the West." And just like that, he vanishes. Like a breeze. A breeze that smells faintly of fish sauce. You lie down again, your helmet still on, your mind racing. Do you want to leave town? Can you survive a getaway plan led by a man with a knife in his smile and board games in his soul? Is the goat somehow involved in all of this? You close your eyes. The wind howls outside like a dying flute. The polite knocking of the nightly mouse begins. Right on time. You smile, whisper, "Not tonight, mouse. Tonight, I have a plan. A new day is coming. A strange escape is about to begin. And your helmet lid is still faithfully guarding your brain. Sleep well, armored water carrier. Tomorrow's gonna be interesting." You wake up before dawn, still wearing your metal pot helmet like a knight of poor life choices. The mice have gone to bed. The wind still whistles gently through the cracks in the wall. And somewhere out there, the first light of day begins to tint the dusty road with the orange hue of hope. Or maybe just a dying oil lamp. You sneak out of the woodshed with footsteps soft as high school love secrets. The wind brushes your collar like a farewell from the straw you no longer sleep on. You round the corner of the horse stable. Kevin is waiting, not standing and not sitting. More wriggling, like he's warming up for a dance battle. Every shoulder twist sends a glint off his dagger tooth in the morning light. "You're on time," he says, stretching like a feral cat. "Good. Folks who aren't usually don't have enough teeth left to bite into a calendar." You nod. You don't ask what that means. In life, there are things you don't need to understand, like onion wine, or the existence of Kevin. He shoves a charcoal-drawn map into your hand, featuring a donkey, a well, and a single arrow labeled out. There are no street names, no scale. There is no indication the artist had ever understood what direction meant. "Family heirloom," Kevin says proudly. My ancestor used it to travel all the way from Dustbite Gulch to Dustbite Gulch, but from the opposite direction. You. Great. So, where do we start? Follow me, he says, heading behind the goat pen. And yes, it's the same goat from earlier, staring and not blinking, the kind of stare that says it has read your escape plan, understood it completely, and still thinks it's garbage. This is Gerald, Kevin says, patting its head. He'll be our guide. Our guide. Gerald has a good sense of direction. Escaped 3 bandit gangs, 1 forest fire, and a wedding without cake. You're not convinced, but you follow. Because really, what better option do you have than a man with a knife in his mouth and a goat who sees the future? The 3 of you tiptoe out of town, walking the dirt path past the cemetery. The gravestones are carved with names like Billy Half-a-Head McGee and Sally Didn't Know Guns Reload That Fast. You walk in silence. Only footsteps, the wind, and Kevin whispering to Gerald. After an hour, you reach a patch of dense brush. Kevin halts and raises a hand. Hoof beats, he whispers. You hold your breath. Kevin steps back. Gerald does too. Maybe in empathy, maybe in self-preservation. From the bushes ahead, a group emerges, cloaked in black, wide-brimmed hats, a drawing of a horse eating bread stitched on their backs. The leader steps forward. Stop. This is the territory of the League of Lords who have no idea where they are but like acting powerful. Kevin. Oh no. The misguided horse gang. You. The what? Kevin leans in. A group of bandits formed by people who can't read maps but love making threats. They steal what they don't need, demand what no one has, and frequently ask, "Wait, where are we?" The leader approaches. "Where are you headed?" Kevin. "Leaving town. No valuables. Just determination. And a goat." The leader squints. "Can the goat dance?" Gerald stares back, nods. Then he lifts a hoof, twirls, and taps the ground 3 times like he's doing flamenco. The bandits burst into applause. The leader tears up. "Since Sally left, I haven't seen anything that beautiful." Then he turns to you. "You may pass, but there must be a price." You grip your shield ready, at least emotionally. "Leave us the map." Kevin hesitates, then slowly hands it over. "But this map, we need it to know exactly where we're lost." Kevin hands it over, eyes misty like he's sending a relative off to war. The gang disappears into the bushes, possibly to continue being lost together. You turn to Kevin. "What now? We've got no map. We've still got Gerald." Gerald nods, then turns back toward town. "No," Kevin says. "We're not going back." Gerald turns left. Not the junkyard either. Gerald turns right. Kevin shrugs. "Good enough? Maybe it's fate." And so the 3 of you, Kevin, and the flamenco goat, walk into unknown territory. No map, no plan, but a sliver of hope. And out here in the Wild West, hope is worth more than gold. You walk beneath the blazing western noon, where the sun hangs overhead like an angry lamp, ready to roast anyone without a hat. Luckily, you have one. Not a cowboy hat, but the trusty metal pot-lid helmet that's been with you from day one. Hot, tight, but loyal. Sweat drips down your shoulders, mixing with dust and a new layer of body odor you've never encountered before. Kevin walks beside you, hunched, occasionally chuckling to himself and muttering to the dagger in his mouth. Gerald, the silent goat, leads the way. His ears twitch, and the tiny bell on his neck jingles with each step. A strange soundtrack for a journey with no map, direction, or real reason except not wanting to be forced into marriage back in Dustbite Gulch. The scenery shifts from low shrubs to dry grassland, and then you hear a cow bellow. Kevin freezes. Gerald halts. You whisper, "Should we be worried?" Kevin frowns. Depends on the moo. If it's an A minor, probably heartbreak. If it's an A major, it's about to charge. You don't get to ask what that means because wham! A massive cow, eyes glowing like hot coals, charges over the hill as if you owe it money, love, or both. Mad cow! Kevin yells, bolting like a man who's never had a knife for a tooth. You run too. Gerald runs first, fast as he trained with a bank robbery crew. You pump your legs, but the water bucket you're carrying, a leftover habit from your job, throws off your balance like a wobbly cartwheel. You veer right, crash through a broken fence, tumble into a cactus patch, RIP your butt, and finally land in a shallow ditch, blessedly just deep enough that the cow can't reach you. It stands at the edge, staring down, memorizing your face. You hold your breath. It doesn't leave. It just groans, then sits, as if deciding, I live here now. Today is about surveillance. Kevin peeks over the edge, grinning. Nice. It likes you. How do I get out? You ask, brushing dirt off your helmet. Kevin tosses you a rope. Climb. This is the West. We're self-reliant, except when we need loans. You scramble up, crawl out of the bovine view, and the three of you continue. You're limping. Kevin whistles. Gerald glances at you with a look that says, Told you so. By late afternoon, you stop beside a lone old tree, standing in the field like God's accidental paintbrush stroke. You collapse to the ground, pulling out dry bread. Kevin produces an empty can. Gerald gnaws your shoelace, a bad habit you've grown accustomed to. Kevin says, Tonight, we need fire, food, and a little conversation to stay sane. What can you cook? You shrug. I can fry eggs. Got eggs? No. Got a pan? Nope. Perfect. Kevin chirps. I'll cook. You brace for a miracle. Kevin opens his bag. Inside are sand, colorful rocks, and a tiny tin box. He pops it open. Inside, dried beans. Of course, beans. The food that never refuses you, no matter how much you wish it would. He dumps them into the can, adds spring water, which you suspect came from Gerald's hat, and starts a fire by rubbing flint together for 43 minutes. Partly due to poor technique. Mostly because Kevin believes real fire takes patience. You watch the beans boil. The smell rises. It's strange. You ask, Do you have salt? Kevin looks at you like you just proposed robbing Fort Knox. Salt? Number I don't trust salt. Makes people soft. Food should taste honest. Like dirt. Sweat. Defeat. You say nothing. Because honestly, that's precisely how the beans taste. You eat. Every spoonful is a challenge to your patience. Kevin eats with gusto. Gerald only licks the rim of the can as if checking for poison. Night falls. The three of you sit by the fire. Its glow reflects off your pot helmet, casting disco lights of poverty. Kevin sings a song about lost love and a chicken that never returned after spring. You don't understand the lyrics, but it feels peaceful. Gerald rests his head on your backpack. Kevin snores, hugging the empty bean can. You stare at the sky full of stars. No streetlights, no car horns, just wind, and your stomach slowly processing the honest beans. And you think, maybe, I don't hate the Wild West so much. Just as long as there are no more mad cows. And no more beans after 9 p.m. You wake up the next morning to the smell of cold beans. It's not exactly awful, but it's not something that inspires a strong will to live. Kevin is still sound asleep, hugging the empty tin like he's dreaming of last night's flavorless feast. Gerald is busy gnawing on someone's tent rope, someone who isn't you. You stretch, stand, and find water to splash on your face. Not out of concern for hygiene, but because you hope something cold will wake you up better than those beans did. As you step past the bushes, you see a figure. It's a wanderer, cloaked in a long robe, a wide-brimmed hat, holding a staff carved with symbols that are either ancient script or the doodles of someone with too much time and no hope. In the early morning mist, he stands there and recites poetry. Loudly, clearly, with rhythm, with rhyme. Morning sun like beefy lard. The breeze blows soft. My thoughts grow hard. Should I eat my bread so dry, or wait for fate to answer why? You try to turn back, but he's already seen you, and waves. Greetings, helmeted warrior of hunger. You sigh. Hello, desert poet. I am Rufus, he bows, poet of the sands. I've lived by words and nearly died many times for reasons far from poetic. You nod politely. Somewhere inside, you whisper, don't talk, don't engage, don't ask anything. But you ask, do you live out here? He smiles. I go, then stay, then go again. Each step is a poem, each blister a popcorn memory. You blink. I'm sorry, a what now? Not important, Rufus says. What matters is, you're looking for something. Water. And maybe a new direction in life. I have water, Rufus replies. And a game. You get suspicious. What kind of game? Guess where the bullet was. Your eyes widen. That doesn't sound encouraging. Fear not, Rufus produces 3 empty bullet casings. No bang, just a trick. Folk game of wanderers. You glance back. Kevin's still sleeping. Gerald is sniffing a cactus. Somehow, inexplicably, you sit down on the old rug Rufus has laid out like a sidewalk magician. 3 shells. 1 tiny pebble. He hides the pebble under one and shuffles fast. Hands as quick as the desert wind whispering secrets. Left, you say, certain. He lifts the middle shell, empty. Again? You agree. This time you focus. Middle. He lifts the right. Wrong again. Care to keep playing? He asks, eyes sparkling like a man whose sole joy is watching others guess wrong. You're about to decline when Kevin suddenly appears behind you, still yawning. Oh no, Kevin says. You've met Rufus? You know him? Rufus is a legend. Once beat an entire army outpost at this game and walked away with a church door. Rufus bows. It's now my dining table. Kevin hauls you up. Let's go. Stay here 10 more minutes and you'll end up betting that helmet. Thank you, Rufus. He bows and gifts you a poem. Water carrier, runner true, meet me once, regret may brew. But if you live to see the dawn, smile wide, and don't hide the salt. You're not sure what it means, but you bow back and follow Kevin and Gerald, continuing toward the unnamed land Gerald picks by, simply heading in a direction. Kevin murmurs, if you ever see someone reading poems and smiling alone in the desert, don't talk. Just walk. Always walk. You say nothing, but inside you feel oddly relieved. At least Rufus didn't attack you. At least this time bullets were just a metaphor. And at least Gerald didn't change direction. By noon you find a small stream. The water is clear, cold, unscented by beans. You drink like you've never drunk before, wash your face, and even rinse your helmet. Kevin grimaces. You've ruined its aura. You. What aura? The survivor musk. Western folk who are too clean raise suspicion. You sigh and dunk the helmet back in the water. This time, just because Kevin told you not to. When the sun is high, the 3 of you, Kevin, and Gerald, set off again. Behind you, Rufus, the cryptic poet, lingers, capable of making your entire day more confusing, but also more memorable. You didn't win the game, but at least you didn't bet your soul, clothes, or goat. And in the Wild West, that's considered a small victory. You thought nothing could be stranger than Rufus the poet and his game of guess where the bullet is. But the West has a rule. If you think you've seen the weirdest thing, walk 5 more miles. and the universe will respond with something more bizarre. That afternoon, after Gerald decided to turn left by some goat instinct, you and Kevin found yourselves on a narrow dirt path shaded by low, whispering trees. No gunfire. There is no bean smell. The wind and leaves were rustling as if they were chatting in Morse code. "Feels like something's about to happen," Kevin whispered. "You say that whenever no one's yelling." "Exactly." Suddenly the trail opened onto a flat field, dry grass stretching wide and in the middle. A wooden gate. It's just a gate. No wall, no fence. Just two old posts with a faded sign above. "Welcome to Silent Town." Beneath it, in smaller handwriting, "Stay quiet or disappear." You looked at Kevin. Kevin looked at you. Gerald walked through the gate as if nothing had happened or couldn't read. You and Kevin followed, and the world shifted. No sound, no wind, no footsteps, not even the familiar creak of your metal helmet. It wasn't quiet. Sound had vanished. You opened your mouth to shout, "What is this?" But no voice came out, not a whisper. It's like someone turned the volume of existence to zero. Kevin waved his hands, gesturing wildly. You didn't understand. He gestured more. You still didn't get it. Gerald lay down and began chewing grass. He seemed to understand and accept his fate. Far better than you. You walked on, past small wooden houses, doors shut tight. No people. But you felt watched, like the whole town was holding its breath as you walked through. At the end of the road stood a larger building. A wooden sign above it read, "Post Office and Premonitions." You pushed the door open. Inside was an expansive room with a long desk, an empty mail rack, and an older man sitting quietly behind the counter. He looked at you. They didn't speak, just raised a finger to his lips. "Shh," and slid a piece of paper and a fountain pen toward you. You picked them up. On the paper was a single sentence. "Write a letter you'll never send." You blinked. Kevin sat cross-legged in a corner, like this was some emotional escape room he'd done before. Gerald, who knows, maybe on the roof again. You sat. You thought. Who would you write to? You thought about your old room. Clean water, a soft mattress, a toilet that didn't require a torch. You remembered instant noodles that claimed to be chicken-flavored and weren't. You thought of your parents, who might believe you went out for milk 3 months ago. You thought of yourself, 3 days ago, when you believed the Wild West would be fun. You began to write. To me, the version who still smells good and hasn't worn a pot on his head, hello. You're probably somewhere safe, never carried water under the blazing sun. A meadow has never chased me or slept beside a man with knife teeth. Appreciate it. Because me, I'm okay. But I now know beans can taste like tears. Don't fear life. But also, don't invite it on a Western adventure. It will say yes. Sincerely, your version with questionable choices. You folded the letter and placed it on the desk. The older man nodded. Then, something strange. He opened a drawer, slid the letter into a wooden box, and sound came back. Wind whooshed. Gerald bleated from the roof. Kevin clapped like he'd just watched a magic show. "See?" Kevin said, his voice a blessing. "It's the town tradition. Everyone who enters has to leave something unsaid, then they can move on. What if they don't write? Then they stay. Forever. In silence. Like Rufus, if he'd failed at poetry." You looked around. The building was still quiet, but something inside you had softened, like you'd set down a weight you didn't know you were carrying. Or, for the first time in days, you'd done something. That didn't involve beans. Kevin waved. Gerald leaped off the roof and landed with a soft thud. You stepped out of the post office, passed through the town again, and walked once more beneath the old wooden gate. Behind you, the silent town faded into a hush. Ahead, the west stretched wide, and for just a moment, a small, still moment, you felt lighter. Not because you were less foolish, but because, for the first time, you'd left something behind. The sun sank behind the hills, leaving the sky streaked with red and orange like someone had carelessly dragged a paintbrush across a giant blue canvas. You, Kevin, and Gerald kept walking. Each step tugged gently on your spine, reminding you that dreams of adventure and spinal integrity aren't always best friends. Gerald led the way. Kevin occasionally broke into bizarre little songs like, "On this weary trail, I saw a sleepy horse, head on a rock, dreaming of being cornbread, of course." You asked, "Are you sure the beans didn't cause permanent damage?" Kevin, "Nope. I've always been like this." Eventually, as shadows crept between the trees, you spotted an old wooden sign leaning by the road. It read, "Kind of okay inn. Bad food, worse beds, absolutely no bears." You nodded in approval. After a day of silent towns, bullet games, and confusing poetry, the promise of no bears sounded like a luxury. The inn appeared, a 2-story wooden house leaning heavily to the left like it had a sore shoulder, its shingles jagged like the teeth of a retired cowboy who lost dental insurance. Dim light flickered from the windows. Something smelled strong, but not like beans. A win. You pushed the door open. A bell rang, or maybe a rusty latch fell off. Inside was a small lobby with a termite-bitten pine desk and a bald man in round glasses and pink pajamas. He was embroidering. No one spoke for 3 full seconds. Then he looked up and beamed. "Welcome to the Kind of Okay Inn. I'm Flint, innkeeper, head chef, and occasional musician if guests can't sleep." Kevin whispered, "I'll sleep. I swear." Flint waved. "Need a room?" You. "Just one. We're not picky." Flint nodded. "Great. We only have one. No window, no bed. But there is a pillow. Smells like popcorn." You. "No bed?" "Nope. I don't believe in beds. They make people soft. Here, we sleep on firm, honest straw. Promotes circulation and character." Kevin shrugged. "I once slept in a barrel. Straw is an upgrade." You gritted your teeth and nodded. Flint led you upstairs via creaky stairs that sounded like each step was reconsidering its life choices. The room was exactly as advertised. No windows, a thick straw-covered floor, and a single pale yellow pillow in the center. Embroidered on it. Better than nothing. You sat down. Straw poked your rear. But honestly, you'd sat on worse. Flint added, "Baths out back, rainwater barrel. If you want it warm, imagine." Kevin asked, "What about dinner?" Flint grinned. "Special tonight, fried corn cakes with pumpkin water." You swallowed. It may be from hunger or brain rejection. 10 minutes later, you sat around a lopsided wooden table. Flint served up burnt gold corn cakes in a bowl of murky liquid. You took a bite. The cakes were dry and crunchy, but genuinely corn. The dip was sweet, bland, and tasted vaguely like a forgotten pumpkin's last wish. You glanced at Kevin. He was eating happily. Gerald licked your plate clean, maybe because he was a goat, or perhaps he just wanted this day to end. After dinner, you returned to your room, laid on the straw, and headed on the popcorn-scented pillow. It did smell like popcorn, but not the good movie theater kind. It's more like popcorn that existed in 1873 and was never cleaned up. You closed your eyes. Flint began playing harmonica outside your room, a tune without structure, like someone trying to blow feelings into the air without knowing which ones. Kevin turned to the wall and whispered, "If I die of corn, tell my mom I died brave." You replied, "No one dies of corn, but maybe from a lack of salt." Outside, the wind whistled through the roof tiles. Gerald curled up in the corner like a croissant with horns. You sighed. No bed, but a place to lie down. Dinner was bad, but not beans. And this inn had no bears, as promised. You felt, quite surprisingly, that you were okay, just for now. Tomorrow still waits. But tonight, in a place without beds, windows, or rules, you found something resembling rest. Sleep well, cowboy. Tonight the pillow still smells all right, and the goat hasn't farted yet. The night at the kind of okay inn felt longer than usual. Maybe it was the itchy straw floor, or Flint's relentless harmonica playing downstairs, as if he were auditioning for the underworld's brass section. Either way, you tossed and turned on the straw pile to find a position that didn't make your spine feel personally betrayed. Finally, Kevin groaned. "I can't sleep." My pillow squeaks like a fat mouse sneezing. You lifted your head. "Mine smells like old movies and sad popcorn." Gerald let out a big yawn. Then, without warning, they stood up and walked to the door. "Where's he going?" you asked. Gerald turned, winked, or you imagined it, then pushed the door open with his horn and vanished down the stairs. Kevin sat up. "I think it's time for a story." "A story?" You yawned. "A campfire story. But no fire, no camp, and absolutely no verified facts." You nodded. "Perfect for tonight." Kevin pulled out a tiny oil lamp no bigger than a tuna can. He lit it. The flickering flame illuminated his slightly crooked face, a mix of weathering, wisdom, and a few surprise punches over the years. He began. "Once upon a time, in a dusty little town called Whistling Chicken, a boy was born with two strange traits. 1, his teeth grew in like metal. 2, he lost every bet he ever made, from birth." You. "This sounds familiar." Kevin ignored you and went on. "People mocked him, called him Tin Boy and Blade Mouth. But instead of sulking, he used his teeth to open cans, cut rope, and sometimes chop carrots." You. "Okay, this is definitely about you." "One day, the boy entered a riddle contest run by a mysterious merchant. If he won, he'd get a map to the lost town, a place where everyone laughs and no one has to carry water." You. "That town sounds magical." Kevin nodded wistfully. But the boy lost, and the merchant vanished, leaving behind only one clue. To find the town, seek someone who doesn't know what they're looking for. You thought momentarily, then asked, "So, that someone is me?" Kevin smiled, gently, sadly, and honestly. "Could be," he said. "You don't know what you're after, but you keep going. You survive. You didn't run when I ate beans mixed with pink salt." You. "Because I had no better options." Kevin. "That still counts as loyalty," he winked. You sat in silence. Then, both of you burst out laughing. Real laughter. The kind that makes your belly ache, your eyes water, and the straw beneath you shift with every shake. Just then, Gerald returned to the door. But something was different. He was dancing, not hopping like a normal goat, breakdancing. Your jaw dropped as he spun on one leg, flipped backward, and did a complete butt-spin tornado move. Kevin whispered, "I told you he used to perform in New Mexico. You didn't believe me. You couldn't look away." Gerald finished with a flourish, stood upright, nodded like a true performer, and somehow pulled out a tattered cowboy hat and placed it in front of himself. Kevin sighed, pulled a coin from his pocket, and dropped it in the hat. Still cracking up, you added the last bit of your corn cake. Gerald looked at you, eyes full of emotion, and gave a slight, dignified nod. No one said anything after that. The three of you, the water hauler, blade-toothed drifter and the dancing goat sat around the tiny oil lamp, not needing anything more. Outside, it started to rain. Gentle drops tapped the roof, like background music for a story no one meant to write. Inside, the warmth of the lamp, the echo of laughter, and the old popcorn smell of the pillow made you feel, though lost, unprepared, and out of place, that you were somehow in the right spot at the right time. You closed your eyes. Tonight, no one was chasing you. No one was shooting. No one was forcing beans upon you. Just an old tale, a little flame, and a goat spinning again. This time, just for fun. The next morning, you woke up in a state that could almost be described as peaceful, until you realized you just dreamt Gerald won first prize at a dance competition in Paris and autographed your hat. The pillow still smelled like popcorn, and the straw jabbed into your back like a gentle reminder that life was not a hotel. Kevin was still asleep, arm draped lovingly over an empty can of beans. Gerald, however, was gone. You looked around. No telltale jingle of his neck bell. No hoof prints in the straw. You whispered, "Gerald?" No answer. Just the distant hum of Flint singing a love song to the downstairs oven. Kevin blinked awake and rubbed his forehead. "Where's Gerald?" "No idea," you replied, a faint worry settling in your chest. The two of you descended the stairs. Flint was wiping down the counter with what might have once been his button-up shirt. When asked, he shrugged. Saw him leave early. Headed east like he had an appointment. An appointment? Kevin scratched his chin. "Huh, I guess it's time." You turned. "What do you mean? You know something?" Kevin sighed and pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. He opened it carefully. Inside was a crude drawing. A goat. A gate. And scribbled at the bottom in jagged handwriting. Gerald. Redemption Tour. Final stop. Snakebone Gulch. You. What the heck is Snakebone Gulch? Kevin. Where it all began with Gerald. And where it almost ended. You blinked. You're saying Gerald has a past? Kevin nodded solemnly, like a professor of tragic folklore. You didn't know? Gerald was once a star in a traveling circus. Stage name, the Hooved Wonder. He danced across 3 states, chewed love letters, and once saved a pan flute player trapped in a wine barrel. But then, he was betrayed. You were stunned. By who? By Snakebone. Is that a person or a snake? Kevin winced. Both. Snakebone's a big guy, wears a belt made of actual snake bones, and talks like someone squeezing sound out of a broken banjo. He used to be the circus manager, until he stole all the money, all the cornbread, and the heart of Gerald's stage partner. You were speechless. Gerald was in love? Kevin nodded, eyes misty. A lady goat named Clementine, pretty as a painting, could flamenco like fire and hooves, but Snakebone took her. Since then, Gerald's wandered, silent, always dancing, like he's trying to dance away the pain. You slumped into a chair. And now, he's going back? Maybe to finish what was started. Silence fell. The story of a goat once in love, now twirling in heartbreak, made your eyes sting slightly. Or maybe that was smoke from Flint's kitchen, which currently smelled like onions being incinerated in regret. You stood up. We have to go. Kevin nodded. To Snakebone Gulch. Flint smiled. Good. But before you go, take this. From under the counter, he pulled a long object wrapped in burlap. Unwrapped, it revealed an old guitar, 2 strings missing, body scratched as it had been through a saloon brawl. Etched on the neck, sing when it hurts, strum when you lose, don't let the music die. This was Gerald's, Flint said. Left it here one rainy night after fighting a silk dancing dog. No one knows why, but I kept it. You took the guitar. It was heavy, worn, but warm, like it still held a song waiting to be played. You nodded to Flint and slung the guitar over your back. Kevin adjusted his scarf, and together, you left the inn. Outside, the skies had cleared. The breeze smelled faintly of sunshine and distant hope. You stepped eastward where Gerald had gone, where Snakebone Gulch waited. You know the way? You asked. Kevin pulled out a map, hand-drawn in colored pencil, with a sad-looking cactus doodled in the corner. I think it's this way. You smiled. Good. I hate getting lost without an emotional reason. And so, off you went again. One man, one blade-tooth mystery, and a broken guitar, chasing after a flamenco dancing goat to confront the past, face Snakebone, and maybe something even bigger. You've never seen Snakebone Gulch on a map, partly because it's too small and partly because every map you've ever used was drawn by Kevin. But this time, though you remain skeptical, something faint, quiet, tells you you're headed the right way. The road to Snakebone Gulch isn't exactly welcoming. It's not paved. No signs. Just a narrow stretch of dirt winding through cactus shrubs and sun-baked stones that seem to sigh underfoot. The farther you go, the hotter the wind gets. Not the pleasant kind, but the type of heat that feels like the sky's trying to sun-dry tortillas, and you're just a prop in the background. Kevin walks ahead, humming a tune. Snakebone. Where the shadows grin, the blade-toothed man walks in, with pothead pal and guitar cracked thin, for a dance that ends where pain begins. You glare. Can you not turn everything into a sad poem? Impossible. When you return to old places, spontaneous poetry just happens. You sigh. Gerald still hasn't appeared, but the hoofprints on the dry ground are unmistakable, pressed deep like a breakup status written in all caps. He's ahead of you, and you hope he's not too late. Eventually, you arrive. Snakebone Gulch. Not like any town you've seen. No buildings, no people. It was just a massive hollow, an old crater carved between three dusty hills. In its center, a rotting wooden stage surrounded by crumbling stone benches, torn circus flags, and a crooked lemonade stand that looks one breeze away from collapse. This is where Gerald used to perform, Kevin whispers, and where Snakebone took everything. You swallow hard. The wind whips around your ears, not gentle as in Dustbite Gulch, but sharp, bitter like a breeze that's watched betrayal firsthand. You edge along the crater rim, stepping down cracked stone steps. Kevin follows, hand gripping his dental dagger, not to threaten but from sheer nerves. You, meanwhile, carry the broken guitar. And inside, a heartbeat you don't quite recognize. At the bottom, you see him. Gerald, standing alone on the faded stage. The wind catches the fur on his neck like a memory tugging at time. His eyes don't look at you. They're fixed on something in the distance, a shabby white tent across the crater floor. And standing in front of it, a man. Tall, gaunt, hair tied in a greasy ponytail. A belt of real snake bones clinks around his waist. He wears a black duster and pointy boots and holds a whip. His smile is lopsided, the kind of smile practiced until it looks smug and imminently punchable. Snakebone, Kevin mutters, voice like rusted iron. Still alive. Snakebone sees you. He raises a hand. Well, a newcomer, and some familiar faces. Kevin Bladetooth, and the dancing goat returns. Gerald doesn't reply, but he steps forward, slowly, like a dancer approaching their final act. Back for honor? Snakebone sneers. Or revenge? Gerald stomps 3 times. That means, Kevin says quietly, 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for I am deeply furious. but still artistically composed. You whisper, "What do we do?" Kevin looks at you. "We perform." "Perform?" "You've got the guitar. I've got the blade. Gerald's got the moves. And Snakebone. He's got a story that never got its ending. You're not sure if this is a duel or a show, but you nod. You sit down in the center of the old stage. Set the broken guitar on your knee. There are only 4 strings left. You tune it carefully. Then, you begin to play. Not beautifully, but honestly. The sound echoes into the dusty hollow, bouncing off the crater walls. Gerald begins to move. He dances, lightly, sharply, with old fire. Each spin is a memory. Each step is a defiance. I'm still here. Snakebone hesitates. His grip tightens on the whip. But no one's looking at him. All eyes, yours, Kevin's, even the wind's, are on Gerald. Kevin walks towards Snakebone, calm. "Leave," he says. "You took Clementine. Don't take anything else." Snakebone shrugs. "I didn't keep her. She came with me because she wanted to." "What did she say when she left?" Kevin asks. "She said, 'I'm tired. Tired of staying with someone who never speaks.'" Gerald freezes. His eyes redden. He stops dancing. He walks up to Snakebone, and then, without warning, he headbutts him. Not a violent blow, just enough. Enough to knock Snakebone off his feet, get tangled in his whip, and tumble backward into a bush. You and Kevin look at each other. Say nothing. Gerald turns. He walks back to center stage. He bows, slowly, gracefully. Curtain call. You pluck the final note, and it's done. Snakebone doesn't return. His whip lies forgotten in the dust, and the old circus stage is finally closed, sealed with a nameless song and a final dance. That afternoon, you, Kevin, and Gerald sat in the center of Snakebone Gulch. This place was once a stage, once a memory, and now the site of the most artistically redemptive goat headbutt in wild animal history. You still cradled the broken guitar. It no longer sang, but echoes of the performance lingered in your mind like a nameless melody, a fitting ending to an old wound. Kevin sighed, eyes turned skyward. "I always thought the day Gerald returned would end with fire, blood, and at least one high-speed chase. But this feels oddly elegant." Gerald licked his hoof, gracefully. You were about to speak when a rustling sound came from behind a nearby bush. Kevin drew his knife. Gerald braced himself. You raised the guitar like a weapon, though you had little faith in its effectiveness. From behind the shrub emerged a woman. She wore a long, weathered brown cloak and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded most of her face. In her hand was a silver cane topped with a star. Her voice came out gravelly but clear. The performance was beautiful. "I've waited a long time to see someone brave enough to return to Snakebone Gulch." You swallowed. Kevin asked, "Who are you?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled a card from her coat, a piece of real parchment edged in silver thread. She handed it to you. You opened it. The handwriting was elegant, slanted, like someone who learned calligraphy while riding horseback. The bearer of music, the keeper of old fire, and the creature who once danced for love. You are invited to the Tavern of the Unvictorious, tonight, when the moon reaches its peak. Do not be late. Signed, M. You looked at Kevin. Kevin looked at Gerald. Gerald sniffed the card. The Tavern of the Unvictorious. You frowned. What is that? The woman smiled faintly. It's a place for those who've lost, but refuse to fall. And with that, she turned and disappeared behind the bush, as if she'd never been there. You stood still for a few moments, your mind racing. Kevin scratched his head. I've heard of it. A secret tavern that only reveals itself to those who've lost something. There, they don't ask who won or lost. Just one question. Are you still moving forward? You glanced up. The moon hadn't risen yet, but you knew you were going. Not for the drinks, but because you were starting to feel like part of something bigger. When night fell, you left Snakebone Gulch, walking by moonlight. You had no map, just a feeling, and the faint scent of popcorn from the pillow you'd secretly kept. Now a strange little talisman of luck. 2 hours of walking later, through a misty valley, you spotted a flickering amber light. A small saloon with a slanted roof and a crooked sign. The Defeated Saloon, below it, in smaller letters. Free drinks for those kicked by love. You stepped inside. Soft music from old instruments filled the air. Not loud, just enough to slow your heart. Inside, people whispered over drinks. The walls were covered with hanging relics, dropped gloves, torn hats, unsent letters, and a broken saddle. The bartender was a bald man with a cotton candy mustache and eyes that looked like they'd wept over everything. He didn't ask names, just said, 3 guests, 1 man, 1 fellow, 1 goat, corner booth, yeah? You nodded. As you sat, Kevin started trembling. What's wrong? You asked. Kevin whispered. I've been here before. Years ago. What did you lose? Faith, he said. In myself. In others. And in dolls. Dolls? He shuddered. There was a night in a small town. I was ambushed by a gang of walking wooden dolls. They weren't evil. Just loud. Always singing. High notes, way too high. And they kept touching my ears. You. Kevin, I know it sounds insane, he cut you off. But ever since, I feared dolls. You almost laughed, but stopped. You just nodded sincerely. A waitress arrived with 3 fizzy drinks. Each glass is labeled, for those who've been disappointed, for those who've been misunderstood, for those who slipped along life's path. You didn't know which to choose. Gerald picked first, the 3rd one. You and Kevin took the remaining 2. The 3 of you clinked glasses, softly. No words. It's just a shared look of understanding. You sipped. It was strange, lightly sweet, cool, like a quiet forgiveness. And in that moment, you felt that losing had never tasted this pretty peaceful. The space inside the Tavern of the Unvictorious felt like the inside of an untold story, dim, warm, and heavy, with secrets dangling from the walls, objects worthless to the outside world, but weighted with quiet gravity to those who'd once lost them. You sipped again from the fizzy water labeled for those who've been misunderstood. Each bubble popped like a whisper. I know. I understand. You're not crazy. Just a little different. Kevin was spinning a wooden spoon in slow circles on the table. Gerald sat upright like a diplomatic envoy, though with the minor difference that he was chewing on the paper menu. In a far corner, an unblinking woman sat with her back against the wall. She wore a silver-gray dress, her hair tied neatly back, her eyes deep like ancient wells that had once held 3 generations of heartbreak. She drank nothing, ate nothing. She simply watched. The barkeep leaned close and murmured, "Careful with her. That's the sleepless woman." You frowned. Sleepless? Yep. Doesn't dream, doesn't rest, never blinks. She comes here every night waiting for someone with the guts to play a hand with her. What kind of game? Not to win money, just to lose properly. I don't think I follow. Only those who've been wrong and still want to try again ever do. You nodded as you understood, but mostly, you didn't want him to keep explaining. At that moment, the sleepless woman stood. She glided to your table, soundless as wind without footsteps. She looked you straight in the eye. Her voice was low, steady, and didn't leave room for refusal. Play? You hesitated. Kevin whispered, "You could say no, but she'll haunt your dreams forever." "But you said she doesn't sleep." "Exactly. She'll dream for you." You stood. Gerald ducked under the tablecloth as if to declare non-involvement. You followed her to a small wooden table with a laid-out deck. She said there were no rules. She didn't need to. You felt you already knew, or that you'd learn as the game unfolded. She dealt 2 hands, 4 cards each, no betting, just flipping. In the first round, you played a spade. She laid down a heart. She asked, "How old were you when you first gave up something that made you happy?" You paused. 12. She nodded. Second round, you played a club. She turned over an ace of diamonds. "When was the last time you laughed for no reason?" "Yesterday, when Gerald breakdanced." She smiled faintly, for the first time since you met her. Third round, your card won. She asked, "What have you never said aloud, but always wished someone understood?" You didn't answer right away. You thought of the old room, the ceiling fan's hum, the screen's blue glow. Then you quietly said, "That I'm not okay, but I keep going, because I don't know what else to do." She nodded, softly, like an unspoken prayer. Final round. She flipped a strange card. No number, just the image of a falling star landing in a glass of water. "This is the card of losing beautifully," she said. "Whoever holds it is granted forgiveness, but only if they admit they need it." You asked, "Do I need to say anything?" Number just, keep playing. She gathered the cards. I tucked them into a wooden box. Then she stood, touched your shoulder gently, and vanished into the tavern's shadows as if she'd never existed. You sat there alone, feeling like you'd just passed a psychological exam administered by every version of your past self. Kevin appeared and placed a hand on your shoulder. "You did good, but I lost." "Exactly. Here, winning means you didn't learn anything." Gerald looked up with a spoon in his mouth and nodded in agreement. Music drifted from a shadowed corner. No one seemed to be playing, but the melody was strange, not happy, not sad, something in between. It was as if the song was still figuring out who it was. You leaned back. For the first time in a long while, you weren't in a rush to understand. You listened. Outside, dawn approached. Moonlight faded. But inside this tavern, time wasn't counted by ticking clocks, but by stories left untold, scars left unshown, and all the times losing turned out to be the most necessary kind of winning. You wake up without knowing when you fell asleep. Maybe it was when the music faded. Maybe when Kevin curled himself into the curtain like an adult-sized cocoon. Or when Gerald decided the tablecloth made a better blanket than a decorative touch. Whatever the reason, you open your eyes and find yourself still in the tavern of the unvictorious. But everyone else is gone. No voices, no clinking glasses. Just the dim glow of an old oil lamp swaying gently from the ceiling, casting a tired light as if trying to hold back the world's collective sleep. You sit up. Kevin still sleeps. Gerald remains curled up like a croissant of melancholy. You rise and head for the door. The tavern isn't locked. When you push it open and step outside, you stop in surprise. There's no valley, no soft fog. Instead, you're in a hallway. Wooden walls, low ceiling, no wind. Just one long corridor stretching ahead, lined with doors on either side, each one completely different. One is carved with dragon patterns. One has hanging bells. One is plastered in unsent postage stamps. You walk forward. Your footsteps make no sound. There's only the feeling that you're floating through the dream of someone who was once disappointed, but still hoped another door might open. Suddenly, one of the doors creaks. Out steps an older man. Round glasses, turtleneck sweater, pocket watch dangling from one hand. His face is stern and gentle, like a grandfather who used to be disappointed in you but still snuck cash into your jacket pocket every holiday. "Hello," he says. "I'm Silas, former manager of this tavern." You nod. "Hi, I thought this place didn't have a manager." "Not anymore," he smiles. "But it did. I was the last to keep the book of names. Those who lost, but still stood back up." Your curiosity sparks. Am I in that book? Silas pulls a leather-bound notebook from his coat. It flips through a few pages, taps his pen gently on one line. "The pot wearer, of unclear purpose, but continues walking." You chuckle. "That's remarkably accurate." "You'll have to leave the tavern soon," Silas says. "No one stays here forever. This place is for resting, not for hiding." You sigh. "I was thinking the same. I just don't know where to go." Silas nods. "Then let's play a game. If you win, I'll show you the way. If you lose, you'll have to find it on your own." "Another game?" "The final one." He smiles. He claps his hands. The wall behind him recedes, revealing a small room with a round table and 3 tall mirrors standing upright. "This one's called Which One Is Really You?" Silas says. "The rules are simple. Look into each mirror and choose which one reflects who you truly are." You step inside. The mirrors shine back your image, 3 different versions of yourself. The first, you, looking strong, proud, wearing modern armor that glints like chrome. Your eyes are sharp. Your posture is solid, like someone who always knows what they're doing. The second, you, disheveled, torn clothes, messy hair, still clutching an old water bucket. Your eyes are lost, like someone who's never finished a plan on time. The third, you, smiling, not proud, not broken, just a genuine, slightly dorky smile. You're still wearing the pot as a helmet. You're holding a broken guitar and standing in a desert. And you look like someone who finally knows they're not alone. You stare at the mirrors for a long time. Silas asks, "Which one do you choose?" You point at the third. "Why?" You smile. "Because that's me when I'm not trying to be anyone else." Silas nods, saying nothing more. He turns, pulls aside a hidden curtain, and opens a door. Behind it is light, not blinding, not divine, just enough to see the path ahead. "Go," he says. "Kevin and Gerald will follow. Once you step out of the tavern, everything will change." You pause at the threshold. "Silas, what did you lose?" He chuckles. "Too much to list. But I remember every single one. 'Cause it's the things I've lost that made me the person sitting here now." You nod. "Goodbye, Silas. Goodbye, potwearer." You step through the door, and the light welcomes you like the morning just began. You step through the door, not expecting, not afraid, just a little curious. The world on the other side isn't loud. There's no dramatic soundtrack or blinding light. Just a desert stretching as far as the eye can see. It's sand soft as flour, with the wind that brushes against you like it's trying to soothe your soul. Overhead, the sky is so impossibly clear and blue that you wonder if anyone's ever managed to paint a shade like that. You stand there for a while, not sure where to go. Then, from behind you, a familiar sound. Be Gerald. He charges at you like a tiny, short-legged warhorse and nudges his head against your side. It's clumsy, affectionate, and strong enough to knock you over nearly. Right after, Kevin steps out of the door behind you, holding his ever-mysterious can of beans, hair wild like he fought a ceiling broom and lost. "Wow," he says, squinting. "This light is amazing." "Yeah," you reply. "But where are we?" Kevin scans the horizon. "A place with no name. But I've heard People end up here when they're done running. You. You mean heaven? Kevin shrugs. Maybe, though I'm pretty sure heaven doesn't involve sand getting into places I can't politely mention. The three of you stand there in the desert. No signs. There are no maps, obviously. But there's this feeling. Strange, deep. Like every part of you, from scalp to soul, finally sits down and exhales. Gerald looks at you, then laughs. Yes, laughs. Not loud, not wild. Just this little raspy chuckle, like an old lawnmower starting up after winter, but unmistakably laughter. You and Kevin glance at each other, then burst out laughing too. Gerald laughs. Kevin laughs. You laugh. Three oddballs, three misfits. None of you know exactly what you're doing, but you're still laughing. In a place with no name or goal, nothing is specific, except that you still have each other. You know, you say, sitting in the sand, this is the first time I've felt okay. Kevin plops down beside you, nodding. I believe you. No, really, you continue. Not the kind of I'm fine where inside you're a Category 5 storm. I mean the real kind. If someone asked me right now, I'd smile and say, yeah, I'm okay. Gerald flops onto his back, all four hooves in the air, and starts spinning slowly like he's doing ballet for an invisible cloud. Kevin leans back, hands behind his head. You know, a lot of people live their whole lives and never get to say that truthfully. Yeah, you say, gazing up at the endless blue. I know. After a while, Kevin nudges you. Want to play a game? You glance at him. Again? Not dangerous, promise. Just, each of us says what we'd do tomorrow if we didn't have to worry about anything. You nod. Okay, you first. Kevin thinks for a moment. I'd open a goat hair salon. Name it Ba Ba Salon. Specialize in Spanish-style curls. You laugh. I'd learn to bake. Something that doesn't explode, isn't spicy, and doesn't make anyone cry after eating it. You both look at Gerald. Gerald stares back, then spins once in place and taps his hoof rhythmically on a rock like he's drumming. Kevin. A music tour, obviously. You nod, naturally. A soft breeze picks up, lifting thin sheets of sand into the air, swirling around like memory's quiet dance. On a distant dune, you spot something glimmering. Maybe water. Maybe just a mirage dreamt up by someone already seeing stranger things. Where do we go next, you ask? Kevin shrugs. No idea, but maybe this time we don't need to. You rise, brushing sand from your pot helmet. Gerald flicks his ears. Kevin stretches. The three of you start walking. Not fast, not frantic. Just walking. Because there's no need to run anymore. And in each step, you hear yourself say, not loud, not forced, but firm enough that you finally believe it, I'm okay. And for the first time in your life, no one disagrees. You've wandered through so many towns, down so many roads, and met so many strange people that you're no longer sure what normal means. But here, in this nameless desert, where golden sand stretches like an unmade bed, and the wind hums like it's telling bedtime stories to the rocks, you feel light. You don't know where you're going, but for the first time, that doesn't scare you. Kevin is whistling a tune that makes no musical sense but intends to get stuck in your head. Gerald walks 2 paces ahead, occasionally stopping to chew on something, possibly a cactus, perhaps a memory. The three of you keep walking until the sky darkens. But it's not a sad kind of dark. It's the kind of dark that says, hey, night's coming. Time to turn on the lights and tell a story. And just as the stars begin to sparkle, like glitter spilled from a giant jar in the sky, you see the star shepherd. First comes the faint jingling. Not loud, not rushed, like wind chimes swaying lazily on a porch. Then, you spot a figure sitting calmly in the sand, holding a tall staff crowned with tiny bells, wearing a wool hat and a cloak that trails softly behind them. And around the figure are stars. Not the ones above, but small ones, floating just inches off the ground, each a soft glow, pulsing gently in the air like shy fireflies. You, Kevin, and Gerald freeze. The person looks up. Their face is neither old nor young. Their eyes were deep and soft, like they could hold an entire galaxy, or maybe just a nap. "Hello," they say. "You're just in time." You hesitate. "In time? For what?" "The star check," they reply. "Star check?" "Yes," the star shepherd nods. "I count them every night. If one is missing, I search. If there's an extra, I note it. If one is dim, I lull it to sleep." Kevin whispers, "I thought I'd met all the weird people. Turns out, I was still watching the trailer." The shepherd gestures for the three of you to sit on a woven rug in the sand. "I need your help," they say. Each of you will hold a star, look at it, and think of a question without an answer. You accept a small starlight as a breath, warm as a child's hand. "What happens then?" you ask. "If the star keeps shining," they say, "the question still matters. If it goes out, maybe it's time to let it go." You stare at your star and think, if I stop trying, would anyone still need me? The star glows steadily. Kevin mumbles something, likely about singing puppets, and his star glows even brighter, then spins. Gerald stares at his star as if preparing to eat it, then gently sets it down and sits on it. The star glows through his fluffy backside, defiantly radiant. The star shepherd smiles. Your questions remain. That's good. Don't rush the answers. Sometimes living with the question matters more. You nod. You don't fully understand, but it feels right. The shepherd pulls out 3 blank sheets of paper, one for each of you. These are things you've carried but never written, they say. Tonight, write them down. Don't worry if it's right or beautiful. Just be honest. You hold your page. It's slightly rough. Smells faintly of moonlight. You pause, then write. I used to think I was invisible, but someone saw me. Even if they didn't understand me, they stayed. Even if they couldn't follow, they walked beside me. They are Kevin. They are Gerald. They are me. On the day I finally looked in the mirror and didn't look away. Kevin writes quickly. It might be a poem, or a list of foods he'd try if his teeth weren't made of scrap metal. Gerald scratches spirals into his paper. It looks like a map. Maybe it is, to somewhere important. The star shepherd gathers your pages. Good. You've left behind a little light for the world. You ask, so, where do we go now? They smile. Not where to. Just, forward. Who knows? Maybe now you're a star for someone else. Then they pack up. The bells jingle. The tiny stars rise into the sky, twinkling. The night doesn't feel quiet. It feels full. Of things not yet said, not known, not lost. You lie down in the sand. Gerald rests his head on your leg. Kevin closes his eyes, murmuring, "Ba ba salon," like a lullaby. And you whisper, "Tomorrow. Even if I have no plan, I'll still keep walking. And if I meet someone asking the question I once did, I'll sit beside them and be silent." The wind brushes your hair. A tiny star falls gently onto your shoulder. You let it stay. Because now, you too have known how it feels to shine. The next morning, when you wake up, it's raining. But not the usual kind. It doesn't soak your clothes. It isn't cold. It's a rain of memory. Each drop landing like a gentle tap on your mind, waking up things you thought you'd forgotten long ago. You hold out your hand to catch one. Instantly, an image appears in your head. You, 7 years old, hiding under the kitchen table after breaking your mother's favorite vase. You remember the feeling, fear, guilt, and a desperate hope that someone would find you. Kevin looks up too. Each drop that hits his forehead makes him flinch slightly. "Oh boy," he mutters. "I just remembered I once kissed a doll's hand and apologized for pulling her hair." Gerald stands perfectly still, eyes half closed, ears twitching softly. He's remembering something too. Maybe it was his first dance in front of an audience, or the first time a fake cornbread betrayed him. You ask Kevin, "Is this rain real?" "If you remember something," he says, "then it's real." The three of you sit there for a while under the rain. No one shields themselves. No one hides. Because sometimes what soaks you isn't the rain. It's all the things you've tried too long to forget. And then, whoosh, Gerald takes off running. You shout, "What is it?" Kevin is already on his feet. "I saw someone! A shadow!" You chase after Gerald, feet slipping in the sand. Memory rain still falling as if encouraging you to remember more while running. Ahead, through the damp haze, you spot a figure. Small, darting between rocks, walking like wind, and swinging a cloth bag from his shoulder. You're not sure why, but you know. He took something. Gerald is closing in. Kevin growls. You yell, "Stop!" And the figure does. You approach. He's small, his hood pulled low, and he's barefoot. When he turns around, you're surprised. It's a boy. Freckles all over his face, eyes sharp and curious like a kitten that's lived through too many lifetimes. He doesn't look scared. He tilts his head and says, "Too slow. But it's okay. I only take things that need to be taken." Kevin snaps, "What did you take from us?" The boy holds up the bag and pulls out its contents. A small jar. Empty. The label reads, "Self-blame." A torn photograph. You can barely make out your figure, turned away. A scrap of paper that says, "If anyone knew the real me, they'd leave." You blink. They're yours. Kevin recognizes an old cloth, probably from his early days before he wore coats full of knives. He whispers, "My God. That's the scarf I cried into when I was 16. I thought it was lost." The boy says, "I'm the thief of ugly feelings." You gape. Of what? It means I only take what you shouldn't carry anymore. Shame, guilt, soft old fears. Words no one says but that play over and over in your mind. You ask, "And once you take them, what do you do?" He smiles gently. "I make umbrellas." What? He pulls out an umbrella from behind him. It's large, worn, patched with old letters, pajamas, and a wooden handle carved from a kitchen spoon. Each patch is something someone once left behind. You see your handwriting, Kevin's scarf, even the note you wrote yesterday. "This umbrella doesn't open when it rains water," he says, "but when it rains memories, it works." He snaps his fingers. The umbrella opens. A gentle glow covers all three of you. And suddenly you feel lighter. Not physically, but it's like you've just exhaled something you didn't realize you'd been holding in your chest for years. The boy says, "I'll keep going. Lots of people still don't know what they're carrying." You nod, letting him pass. Kevin asks, "Do you ever carry anything from yourself?" He shakes his head. "Not anymore. I used to carry everything, and I nearly didn't make it." Gerald bows his head, a sign of respect. The thief winks and vanishes into the rain like he was never more than part of your memory. Only the umbrella remains, floating softly down to the ground, folding itself like a letter delivered late but still welcome. You bend to pick it up, carved into the handle with a tiny knife. Let go of what no longer loves you. You, Kevin, and Gerald stand in the memory train. Not wet, not heavy, no longer hiding. And for the first time, you don't have to apologize for what you used to carry. After the rain of memories, the sky cleared. The air felt lighter and cleaner, and carried a scent like toasted bread mixed with something faintly familiar. Perhaps the smell of you before you knew what worry was. You, Kevin, and Gerald kept walking, not saying much. Each of you quietly folded away the part you just released, like folding an old blanket, once damp, now sun-dried. The road led the three of you to a small hill. Not tall, not too steep, but completely covered in fabric. Yes, fabric. Not grass, but soft, dreamy cloth, spreading from the foot of the hill to its peak, as if someone had accidentally dropped an entire bedding store here. You stepped forward. Each step was strangely gentle. No sound, no pain. It was like walking through the dream of a very agreeable person. Kevin frowned. This place looks delicious. What do you mean? I mean, if I were feeling down, I'd lie here and never get up again. You looked around. Maybe that's why they call this place the Hill of Soft Things. At the top, you saw a man lying on a pile of pillows. A thick beard, wild hair, holding a notebook and a magnifying glass. He looked like someone who used to be an astronomy professor, switched to baking donuts, then decided to count the stars in his heart. He looked up when he saw you. Oh, new guests. He yawned. Welcome to the top of the hill, where I count stars but never get it right. Kevin raised an eyebrow. You must be the jumbled star counter? That's right. The man yawned again. I'm Albert, but you can call me Flat, since I mostly lie flat like this. You sat down. The sand beneath the fabric felt like an unset chocolate mousse. Albert said, I used to count stars to understand the universe. But after 274 nights, I realized I just wanted someone to count with me. You said nothing. That sentence fell gently into your heart, like a rhymeless poem. Then he pointed behind him. If you need a place to sleep, the pillows are yours. They're good pillows. One of them talks, but only if you're truly tired. Gerald ran toward the pile of pillows, rolled into the middle like a croissant with a poet's soul. Kevin smacked one. It bounced like it had sprung. This could replace beds forever. You picked a light blue pillow, rested your head. It breathed. Then it whispered, so softly, so kindly. All right, sleep now. You've done enough for today. No one needs you to be better anymore. Just a little lighter. Just stay with me tonight. You opened your eyes. Then, I closed them again. Kevin lay spread out, mumbling something about sun-dried beans. Gerald let out little snores like a tired sewing machine. Albert lit another small oil lamp. I'll watch the stars tonight. You all rest. You asked, how many have you counted? Albert smiled. I don't remember. But I do know one thing. Everyone has a star named after them. Not everyone dares look up to find it. You said nothing more. The pillow beneath your head rose and fell gently as if it knew every thought you had. And instead of urging you to solve them, it only whispered, it's okay. You don't have to be strong forever. Lie down for a while. The night at the Hill of Soft Things had no bugs, loud wind, or unfinished business. Only the light of stars scattered like someone spilled sugar over a velvet curtain of sky. And amid all the things you didn't know, one thing was sure. Tonight, you would sleep. Not to escape, but to rest. When you opened your eyes the next morning, the Hill of Soft Things was as quiet as a long hug that hadn't let go. The pillow beneath your head whispered one last time, thank you for trusting me. Sometimes not bracing yourself is a form of courage. You gently brushed the pillow, and somehow felt that it smiled, before returning to just being a regular pillow. Kevin was still snoring, one arm wrapped around the bean can, like it was his past. Gerald had a hoof resting on a pillow shaped like a loaf of bread, looking completely content. But you knew. It was time to move on. You stood up and nodded, thanks to Albert. The jumbled star counter still lay there, drawing constellations with a hollow straw in the air. You didn't wake Kevin. No need. Gerald gave 2 snorts, and Kevin sprang up like a human-sized cereal spring. The 3 of you continued walking. I'm just heading out. No map. No schedule. But as you'd learned, sometimes walking without knowing where you're going is the only way to know you're still alive. Soon, a sign appeared in the grassy clearing. Rest stop for people not going anywhere. Below it was a crooked arrow pointing toward a small wooden house, with a porch, a hammock, and another wooden sign hanging out front like an old-timey apothecary. Free lemonade, but you have to drink it slowly. You paused. Kevin exclaimed, "I've never felt more welcome in my life." You stepped forward and pushed the door open. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of lemons, like a middle school summer memory, back when your biggest problem was who accidentally ripped your notebook and hadn't apologized yet. Behind the counter stood an older woman, hair pure white, but eyes remarkably bright. On her shirt, a small stitch patch read, "Grandma Lemon." "Hello, darlings," she said. "You're earlier than usual today. Still nice and cool." Gerald nodded. Kevin, "Ma'am, how long have you run this place?" "Oh, a long time," she said. "Since back when people didn't know they needed to stop. Now they come more often, not to rest, but to breathe." You sat down. She poured each of you a glass of lemonade, pale yellow, no ice, not too sweet, not too sour, just right. Like a sincere sentence, not cloying, not bitter, but something you believed in. You took a sip, and it felt like you had just swallowed a quiet little, "Well, okay then." It's the kind of okay you say when you're not trying to win. When you know you don't have to brace yourself anymore. When you finally let go of something that wasn't yours and aren't afraid of missing it. Grandma Lemon sat across from you. She pulled out a tin mailbox. "This is the box for letters without an address," she explained. "If someone needs to say something but doesn't know to whom, just drop it in. One day, the right person will hear it." Kevin immediately pulled out a scrap of paper. I wrote quickly, folded it in fourths, and dropped it in. You asked, "What did you write?" Kevin shrugged. "Don't quite remember. But maybe it was, 'I forgive you. Don't ask me why.'" Gerald grabbed a pen. I drew a heart and a carrot. No one dared interpret it. You looked at the blank paper in front of you. You thought. Then you wrote, "To the one who made me doubt myself. Thank you. Because of you, I learned to trust myself again, slowly but honestly. I haven't forgotten, but I no longer carry it with me." You folded it, dropped it in the box. The lid closed with the softness of breath. Grandma Lemon smiled. "All right, you can keep going now." You asked, "Where to?" "Wherever your heart says, 'Yeah, this feels like enough.'" You nodded, drank the last sip of lemonade, a little stronger than the first, like life after you stop adding sugar. The 3 of you left the shop. Grandma Lemon waved. The sun began to rise, not harsh, just enough to make everything feel real. And at that rest stop with no map, you realized, not everyone needs to know where they're going. They need to know they're no longer stuck where they once were. You left the rest stop for people not going anywhere, with a bit of lemon still lingering in your throat and the feeling that your heart had just been smoothed out by sunlight. Kevin was carrying a tissue embroidered with flowers. "In case my emotions get the sniffles," he said. Gerald was still gnawing on a spoon. No one stopped him. It seemed to be his way of thinking. The road ahead had no name. Just a narrow path winding through soft grass and wildflowers as tall as the knees of someone with just enough self-respect. Above, the clouds drifted like they were on vacation. You glanced back at the sign one last time. It had already faded, as if the rest stop only appeared when someone truly needed it, and vanished once their heart felt a little lighter. You asked, "Where are we going?" Kevin shrugged, scratching his head. The best kind of question doesn't need an urgent answer. And so the three of you kept walking. After a while, you saw a man. He was sitting by the roadside with a curved bamboo yoke on his shoulders, as if it had carried hundreds of kinds of sadness. On either end hung large cloth bags, each with handwritten labels. Regret carried for others, excess pressure, anxiety on hold, and days that were too long. He saw you and gave a slight nod, not overly friendly. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes made breathing easier. Kevin whispered, "I know him. He's the one who carries tired days for you." You blinked. You mean, he carries things for people? Only if they're truly tired, and truly willing to let someone help. You walked closer. The carrier nodded. He pulled a small basket from his side and placed it before you. "Want to leave anything?" he asked, voice low like a drum echoing behind mountains. You hesitated. Then, very slowly, you pulled a small piece of paper from your pocket. On it was written, "I have to be strong. If not, who will be?" You looked at it one last time. Then, I placed it into the basket. The carrier nodded again, saying nothing. He tucked the note into a bag labeled, "To be carried when needed." Kevin stepped up. He pulled an old soda can stuffed with yellow sticky notes from his bag. "Each one is something I force myself to do, even scraping my tongue with a knife." The carrier received it carefully, without judgment. Gerald didn't do anything. He lay beside the man, resting his head on one end of the yoke like saying, "Just let me lie here a little, then I'll go on." The carrier said, "Keep going. I'll be here. When you're too tired, come back. I'm not going anywhere." You wanted to ask how he lived and if he ever got tired, but then you realized that some people exist so that others can breathe. You nodded your farewell, and the three of you continued without looking back. You didn't need to. By late afternoon, when the sunlight tilted like an unsent letter, you saw a small wooden hut. On the door hung a single sign, "Mirror." Just that. No explanation. Inside there was nothing but a large mirror framed in old oak. Etched on the glass were the words, "You will see nothing unless you've left enough behind." You stepped forward, looked in. No reflection. Only a blank space. So empty you wondered if you were still even there. Kevin looked in, then nodded. "Yeah, that happened to me too. Took me 3 visits before I saw myself, without pretending." Gerald didn't bother looking. He just curled up in the corner and fell asleep like someone who'd already seen too much. You kept staring. The mirror still showed nothing. But you weren't afraid. Because now you know. Just because something hasn't appeared doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe it's just waiting for you to stop pretending. You smiled, gently, but genuinely. And in that moment, for just a flicker, you saw a pair of eyes staring back. Not big, not clear, but they were yours, and you were smiling. That night, the sky wasn't fully dark. Instead of a deep, black void, the entire sky draped over you in a soft lavender hue, like a worn-out handkerchief someone had hung to dry among lazy clouds. And in the center of that violet silk, the moon appeared, big, round, and somehow mischievous. Do you feel like the moon's laughing at us? You asked. Kevin looked up, squinting. Not quite laughing, more like, you guys are adorable, in your hopeless little mess. Gerald was chewing on a glowing pebble. No one knew why it glowed, or why Gerald licked it like coconut ice cream. The three of you camped under a low tree, where the fallen leaves looked like unspoken promises. You built a small fire. Nothing fancy. Just enough for warmth, light, and the quiet reassurance that something was still burning inside you after everything. Kevin pulled an old notebook from his pocket, a worn spine and leather cover with faded letters. I used to write down people I met, he said. No names, just feelings. You were curious. What about me? Kevin flipped a few pages and read, Page 17, met someone wearing a pot. Doesn't know where they're going. Smiles a bit late. But eyes don't lie. You laughed. I want that printed on a t-shirt. Gerald wedged himself between you two like a furry croissant. His forehead rested against your leg. You sighed, relieved like someone hit their lax button inside your chest. A soft breeze blew through. You reached to hold your hat, but missed. The beret you'd worn since the first day lifted into the air. Not too high, not too fast. Just enough to hover in front of you, spin once, like it was saying goodbye. Kevin reached out, missed. Gerald jumped, also missed. And the hat floated off, carried by the wind and moonlight, shrinking into the night like a letter without a signature. You thought about chasing after it. Really, you did. But your legs didn't move. Because for the first time, you weren't afraid to let go of something that had once felt like a part of you. Aren't you going to get it back? Kevin asked. You shook your head. It flew away because it was time. Kevin nodded, leaning back. That's the most grown-up thing I've ever heard. And I once raised a snake in a skirt, so my standards are high. You smiled. The moon still hung above you, smirking like someone who knew everything but refused to spoil the ending. Then you felt a hand. Not yours. Not Kevin's or Gerald's. But a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Not gripping, pulling, or holding you down. Just there. You didn't turn to look. Because you knew it wasn't anyone honest. It was your hand. The version of you that used to be afraid to fall apart and tremble at the thought of tomorrow. That hand didn't shake anymore. It didn't flinch. It just rested on your shoulder, like a whisper saying, you don't have to be stronger than everyone else. You have to be kind to yourself. You placed your hand on top of it. It vanished, but the warmth lingered. Kevin suddenly sat up. Do you hear music? You tilted your head. You did. Somewhere in the breeze, a soft melody drifted. There is no clear tune, but unmistakable emotion, like someone humming in their sleep. Should we follow it? You asked. Kevin grinned. If music calls your name, not following it would be rude. Gerald nodded and, unexpectedly, did a little shoulder shimmy, a tiny dance. You stood up and brushed the sand from your pants. Let's go, you said. No idea where, but for once, I don't need to know. And so, the three of you, a person who once wore a pot, a guy who used to fear dolls, and a goat who could breakdance, continued. Beneath the mischievous moonlight, carrying nothing but lighter hearts, a few unsaid sentences, and one clear truth. You weren't walking to escape anymore. You were walking because you'd finally begun to love yourself. You don't know how long you've been walking, when your steps are no longer measured in meters, but in stories past, in laughter no one recorded, in memory rain that dried inside your shirt. That night, the moon disappeared, but not to hide. It's more like it was making space for silence. And you, Kevin and Gerald arrived at a place with no sign. just a Y-shaped crossroads. The left path is blanketed in golden leaves. The right path was smooth as if freshly swept by the wind, and in between them, silence. No wind, no insects, no music, no words. Just a stillness so pure that you could hear the sound of your thoughts. Kevin stepped back and whispered, "I don't like this place. It feels real." You nodded. "Yeah, but maybe we need to stand still somewhere real for a bit." All three of you sat at the crossroads as if silence was a place to pause. Not because you're tired, but because you need to. Then, from behind the bushes came the sound of a flute. Not fast, not flashy, just a breath stream through bamboo, soft, steady, and sad like a hug you never received. A man stepped out, wool sweater, deep eyes, holding a flute half his height. He looked like someone who had walked, fallen, and returned to play a few notes for those still lost. "Hello," he said, voice warm like ginger tea. "I'm the flute player." You asked, "Do you live at this crossroads?" He nodded. "I don't give directions, I just play for those who haven't heard their own voice yet." Kevin whispered, "He looks like an unfinished dream." You didn't answer. You just watched him and listened. His flute had no clear melody, but it made you remember the things no one ever taught you, yet you knew. Like how you learned to stay quiet when sad, even though no one told you to. Like how you knew how to smile even though no one had taught you. Like how you once believed in something simply because your heart insisted on believing. You didn't know why a tear fell. Just one. Not dramatic. Just real. Kevin placed a hand on your shoulder. Silent. Gerald bowed his head and pulled a wildflower from somewhere, placing it in front of the flute player like a thank you note. The man looked at the three of you. "You're nearing an important part," he said, "where the road no longer splits in three, but becomes one." You swallowed. "Where does it lead?" He smiled. "No one knows, but everyone must walk it. It doesn't need a name, just a ready heart." You nodded. He reached into his coat and pulled out a handkerchief. I held it out to you. "For when you need to wipe your eyes," he said. "Not to hide the tears, just to wipe gently. And keep going." You took it. On the edge was stitched a small line. "Pain doesn't stay, unless you hold it still." Kevin blinked. "I had one just like this." The man smiled. "Anyone who's ever been sad has one." No one said anything else. He played one more passage, then stepped back into the darkness. No footsteps, no goodbye. Just a melody left behind in the air like the breath of someone who once believed fell, but never lost their kindness. You stood up, folded the handkerchief and placed it close to your heart in your pocket. Kevin adjusted his collar. Gerald stretched like he was about to run a marathon, though still artistically pudgy. The three of you looked at the crossroads one last time. You asked, "What now?" Kevin smiled. "You choose the path. I'll follow." You, "What if I choose wrong?" "Then we'll be wrong, together." You nodded. And so, you walked on, not knowing if it was the right way, but knowing this: you were no longer walking alone. The nameless road on which you, Kevin, and Gerald have been walking begins to slope gently. The wind blows from behind like encouragement, like the world itself whispering, "Keep going." You're almost there. You don't know where there is. Strangely, though, you're no longer afraid of not knowing. Like the first time you laid down on the soft cloth hill or looked into the mirror, which showed nothing, you've begun to understand that not everything needs an apparent reason to be worth trusting. Gerald waddles ahead, ears flopping with the breeze. Kevin stays quiet, fingers brushing against the wildflowers by the path, as if touching the memories someone once left behind. And then, you see a house. Not big, not fancy. Just a small wooden house sitting quietly at the end of the slope. Smoke curls up from the chimney like a story half written. In front, there's a bench. On the bench, a folded blanket. And a mailbox. Wooden. Old silver paint is flaking off, and most curiously, unlocked. Kevin looks at you. Maybe this is where we were meant to end up. You nod and step closer. Etched into the front of the mailbox. If you've ever sent a question with no address, open this. Today might be the day the answer arrives. You blink. Your heart beats. Not hard, not fast. Just enough to remind you it's waiting for something. You open the mailbox. Inside, a single envelope. No name, no stamp, but the handwriting on the front. It's yours. Your hand trembles as you open it. Inside is a single sheet of paper, the ink slightly smudged but still readable. To me, the one still walking. If right now you're afraid, remember, you've survived things you once thought you couldn't. If right now you feel lost, remember, you don't need to be understood to be loved. If right now you feel not good enough, remember, enough isn't a standard. It's a feeling, and you're getting closer to it. For every time you've fallen, I am still proud of you. Signed, a version of you who once didn't believe they'd make it this far. You sit in silence, eyes stinging, not because you're sad, but you know, you once left this for yourself. A day long ago, heavy and hopeless and aching for a sliver of light. Kevin looks over your shoulder and says nothing. Then he pulls out a small pen and adds one line beneath the letter. P.S. You've come farther than you think, and you're better than you believe. Gerald reaches out with a hoof and presses down in some ink, maybe dirt, maybe hot sauce. Either way, it becomes a lopsided heart. You laugh. This time not nervously, not tightly, not pretending. You ask Kevin, should we knock on the door? He shrugs. Could. But maybe that door's meant for someone else. And us? I think we already got what we came for. You look up. The sun is beginning to set, not fast, not rushed. It is as if it knows you're watching and is still holding a little longer, so you have time to say thank you. You, Kevin, and Gerald sit down on the wooden bench on the porch. No one says a word. You watch the sunset fall across the horizon, where every once unanswered question is slowly being softened. You place the letter on your lap. The wind stirs, but it doesn't take it. It seems like it wants to stay a little longer. And you know, you still don't know everything. But you know one thing. You've stopped looking for answers out there. Because sometimes, it's you. The broken, the lost, the uncertain you, who ends up writing the gentlest words of all. Night fell softly, like a whispered apology from someone you once missed, once blamed, and eventually forgave without ever saying it aloud. The night breeze wasn't cold. It felt like a gentle hand tracing down your back saying, "Hey, it's okay now." You were still sitting on the wooden bench in front of the house, the old letter tucked neatly in your pocket, close to your heart. Kevin was folding the edges of a tissue into a strangely ugly swan. Gerald was dozing off, ears drooping like two overused spoons no one had washed in ages. The sky above bloomed with stars. Not the kind that glitters for attention. These just hung there quietly, like promises that had been kept, or sadness that had been forgiven. And then, you heard footsteps. Slow. Steady. Like the sound of a heart taking a walk after a long, long day. From the end of the path, a woman appeared. Her hair was white like a young moon, and she wore a long robe that brushed the ground, holding a small oil lamp glowing faintly. Every step she took seemed to make the air softer. You didn't feel fear, or even curiosity. only the strange certainty that you'd been waiting for her without knowing it. She approached, nodded, and smiled. "Hello, my dears," she said. "I'm the keeper of all sleep." Kevin blinked. "All sleep?" She nodded. "From children who won't nap to grown-ups who can't sleep from too much thinking." You swallowed. "What do you do when someone won't sleep?" She sat beside you. "I don't force it. I stay. Sometimes all someone needs is for another not to leave." Gerald snorted softly. She gently stroked his back. He sighed, a deep, peaceful sound. The keeper placed her little lamp on the step. Its flame flickered as if breathing in sync with the three of you. "Behind this house," she said, "there's a wooden staircase. It doesn't lead to a basement. It leads inside yourself." You said nothing. She continued. "No one has to go down. But if you've come this far, maybe it's time." You turned. The back door of the wooden house was slightly ajar. Just as she said, a narrow staircase led downward. Not dark, not deep, just softly lit, inviting. You looked at Kevin. He nodded. "Go on. Gerald and I will wait." You picked up the lamp and stood. I stepped through the door. The stairs didn't creak. Each step felt familiar, like the nerves before admitting something honest, or the calm that comes when someone believes you without proof. At the bottom, you will find a small room. No table, no shelves, no pictures, just a single large mirror, and a worn armchair facing it. You approached. In the mirror, you didn't see your reflection. You saw your memories. You, at age 8, standing in the rain, clutching a torn comic book and laughing at a poorly drawn joke. You, at 17, sitting in silence, typing, "I'm not okay," then deleting it. You, last week, resting your head on a soft pillow, nodding as the wind whispered, "You don't have to try so hard anymore." And then, the armchair behind you warmed. No one was there, but you could feel a hug. Not tight, not possessive, just long enough for you to let go of the need to sit upright and brave. No one asked, "Are you okay? Why are you crying? What's next?" It was just a hug, silent, gentle, permission to just be. You leaned your head back against the chair and whispered to the universe, to every miniature lost version of yourself, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." You don't remember exactly how you left that room. You remember. When you returned, Kevin was stoking the fire, and Gerald was roasting, something suspiciously leafy. The keeper of sleep smiled. "You went deep enough," she said. You nodded. No explanations, no stories, because some journeys only need one witness. You were truly there. That night, strangely, no one slept, but no one was tired. No one was restless. No one lay awake with thoughts stampeding through their mind like wild horses. You, Kevin, and Gerald sat around the small campfire like three side characters in a story that didn't need a climax. The night wind brushed your cheek like someone gently placing a hand, whispering, "Hey, I'm still here." You called that night the white night without sleeplessness. A night where you were awake, but not tense. Silent, but not empty. Light-hearted, but without forgetting. You rested your chin on your knee, eyes gazing across the grasslands where the moonlight spilled like milk. Kevin folded a piece of paper into a bird and dropped it into the fire. "I used to think that if I didn't say my sadness out loud, it would just go away," he murmured. "But turns out, it just moved to my stomach." Gerald was digging a hole, no one knew why, to bury a memory, maybe to hide an imaginary cornbread. Then, in the distance, a A flickering light appeared, not from a lamp, not stars, but fireflies. Not ordinary ones. Each carried a thin, glimmering thread, like a string tied to a wish. They spiraled in the air, leading the three of you down a slope soft as whipped cream. At the bottom was a garden. No fences, no signs. Just neat rows of soil, each marked by something strange. A single shoe with no pair. A pen cap. It's a broken coin. A crumpled note that read, "I'm sorry." And in the middle of the garden was a woman sowing seeds. She wore an old sweater, her hands covered in soil, her face makeup free, but her eyes glowing like someone who had just rediscovered herself in the fourth drawer of her own heart. She looked up. "Hello, friends," you asked. "Who are you?" She smiled. "I'm the one who replants what was thought lost." Kevin sat down immediately. "You mean the things people lose?" "No," she said. "The things they think are lost, but are really just buried under a mess they haven't sorted yet." She pointed toward each row. "Here, I plant the hugs never given. That one's for the apologies never sent. And over there, that patch is for the smiles people tucked away because someone told them they weren't good enough." You looked at the garden and felt your heart soften like cotton left in the sun. She held out her hand. "Do you have anything you want to plant?" You thought for a moment. Then reach into your pocket. You pulled out a folded piece of paper, the one you wrote long ago, forgot, remembered, and carried all this way. "I'm not interesting enough for people to stay." You handed it to her. She read it. I did not comment. I nodded, placed it gently into the soil, and covered it with soft earth. "Tomorrow something strange will grow here," she said. "Anyone who touches it will smile, without knowing why." Kevin dug into his pocket and pulled out an old broken keychain. "I gave this to someone once. They gave it back. So I kept it like a punishment." She received it gently, planting it like a seed of hope. Gerald said nothing, just pulled a tiny seashell from one of his horns. She smiled. "This one is special." She rinsed it in the well nearby and handed it to you. "You keep this," she said. "There's something inside you'll need." You held it to your ear. From deep within the shell, a voice whispered, "I know you once thought you weren't enough. But I've watched you through every day, every time you sat down and didn't give up. And I think you're the only one I've always believed in, even when you didn't believe in yourself." You held the shell tightly. You didn't want to say anything. You didn't need to. You didn't know whose voice it was. But maybe it was yours. A version of you who learned to love yourself before ever learning how to please anyone else. The gardener of lost things looked at the three of you. "You may go on now." You asked, "Go where?" She didn't answer right away. I just pointed it out. Above you the clouds had cleared, and a path appeared, made entirely of light. No bricks, no dirt, just light. Software quiet, opening in a direction your heart had known the name of for a long time. You, Kevin, and Gerald stood before the path of light. A road without edges, markings, or even paved stones. Just a stretch of light, like milk blended with honey, glowing gently as if someone had brewed it from hope, trust, and a single tear. "It's beautiful," Kevin whispered. "Yeah," you replied, "and somehow familiar." Gerald said nothing but stood closer to you than usual. It was as if you sensed that the following steps weren't just forward. They were inward, towards something you once avoided. You stepped onto the glowing path. It didn't dazzle. Each step felt like gently dusting off years of heaviness clinging to your heart. Eventually, the path widened, and a music box was in the center. It made no sound. It didn't turn. It simply sat there, quietly waiting. On the lid, a small inscription read, "Open me, but only when you've genuinely forgiven. Not someone else, yourself, from that day." You knelt. Your hand trembled, not from fear, but because you'd been holding on too tightly for too long. You placed your hand on the lid, and then, in your mind, it appeared. That day, the day you told someone you were fine, then went home and skipped dinner. The day you typed, "I'm okay," deleted it, typed it again, then never sent it. The day you looked in the mirror and didn't want to be friends with the person staring back. You took a deep breath and whispered, "I forgive you." Because I know back then you did the best you could, even if it wasn't perfect, even if it wasn't right. But without that version of me, I wouldn't be here now. Click. The box opened. No spinning ballerina. There are no winding gears, just music. Software simple, 3 notes, looping. But each one brushed against your ribs, melted into your chest, leaving behind nothing but softness. Kevin sat beside you, eyes misty. "You just did something I never have." You looked up. "Forgive yourself?" He nodded. "I've forgiven so many people, but somehow, I always skipped me." You held his hand. Gerald wrapped around your back like a fuzzy number 8. You looked into the box again. Lined in velvet was a tiny slip of paper, as if left just for you. "From now on, speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you love most." You smiled. "Okay." Kevin said, "I want to write something too." You handed him the pen. Instead of writing on paper, he opened his palm and began to write. Each letter is small and messy, but unmistakable. "I still make mistakes, but I am no longer one." He looked at you. "I'll keep this in my hand. Every time I go to scold myself, I'll open it and read." You opened your palm and wrote, "I'm still here. Still trying, even if no one sees." Gerald stuck out a hoof. You dabbed the pen and wrote a tiny phrase on it. "Go back to sleep." Because sometimes, that's the most beautiful thing a being can do. The 3 of you stayed there. No rush. On a road made of light, there were no deadlines, only unfolding. And in that moment, you realized what you needed wasn't a grand finale, but a quiet, gentle second, where you no longer had to fight yourself. You, Kevin, and Gerald still sat beside the music box, its lid open. The light from the path ahead wasn't dazzling, but it was enough. Enough to see one another's faces. Enough to know that no one was bracing anymore. No one needed to prove anything. You placed a hand over your heart. Nothing magical happened. No beam of light. No white doves. Just a steady beat. And suddenly, you understood. Sometimes, making it through a single day without losing yourself is a miracle. At the end of the glowing road, there wasn't a castle. No gates of heaven. No endless ocean. Just a door, a wooden one, light, simple. No lock, no handle, no sign. Only a single small line engraved in soft cursive. "Open, if you're ready to return. Not to where you came from, but to where you truly belong." You reached out. The door opened. No creak, no echo. It's just a gentle parting. And from within, not a blinding light, but a breath. Warm, soft, like a mother's hand resting on your forehead during a childhood fever. You turned to Kevin. He smiled without asking where you were going. "I'll wait here. No rush. Every ending is just a beginning in disguise." Gerald nodded, then curled up, his snout resting on his tail, like a period that knew how to become an ellipsis. You stepped inside. The space wasn't like anything you'd seen before. Not a home, not a forest, not a mountain or a village. It was a part of you. With every step, hazy images glowed around you. Memories, choices, silences at the wrong times, and even acts of kindness no one ever thanked you for. You looked at it all, without judgment. You reached out and touched what once hurt, without flinching. And then you saw a chair, empty. Across from it, a small mirror. Not polished, but clear enough to reflect you, unfiltered. You sat down, inhaled, exhaled. And for the first time, you greeted yourself. Hey there, I know you've come a long way, and you didn't give up. Thank you for still being here. The words didn't ring out loudly, but they landed like a feather on your heart. It is not heavy, but just enough to leave a soft punctuation mark. The kind that closes one chapter and gently opens the next. You stood up. I stepped back through the door. Kevin was waiting, arms open as if you'd just returned from a dream. Gerald nudged your leg like he was saying, "Told you you'd come back." The three of you looked out into the distance. No more path. No more signs. Just wind. And light. And music from the little box humming faintly in the air. You took Kevin's hand. "I don't need to start over anymore," you said. He nodded. "Because you never really left." You smiled. And this time, that smile carried nothing it had to explain. Because now you know. Everything you went through didn't make you wrong. It made you real. And just like that, you've stayed with me until the very last moment of this journey. Thank you for listening so patiently, for bringing your whole heart along every gentle step through the night. If any part made you smile, pause, or feel like you saw a piece of yourself in it, I'm so glad you stayed. Suppose you enjoy journeys like this, soft, silky, and warm enough to fall asleep to. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's all it takes. But to me, it's like a quiet little hug. Now then, go ahead and close your eyes. Everything else can wait until tomorrow. Sweet dreams.